Welcome into another episode of Discard for Magic. I'm one of your hosts, Aaron.
And I'm the other host, James, or Jexic, and today we're excited to bring on Jeff Joyce, who is the designer of the upcoming faction, the Thornhold Drey.
Hey there.
Welcome, Jeff. And before we hop into the Thornhold Drey, why don't you just give us a little bit of backstory on how you found Summoner Wars and how you got into working with Plaid Hat?
Yeah, so as many Plaid Hat stories go, I was originally a Heroscape fanatic and involved with the Heroscapers community. So I started playing Heroscape from the get-go, found Heroscapers.com pretty early on, and was super involved in that community and doing stuff. And then Colby started Plaid Hat, picked up Summoner Wars naturally to support him. Just kind of fell in love with the game instantly and the idea of it and just being like a miniature version, card and paper version of Heroscape. I started working with them as in the playtesting process, right around the time the Alliances Master set came out. So that was sort of my first dip into playtesting, and that whole side of things evolved from there. So very fortunate to see a lot of sides of it from way back.
So that was kind of during the Killer Cactus era of testing then, I assume.
Yeah. So he's actually the one that recommended I get involved with it. And added me to the team because I did a lot on Heroscapers with custom content. So I was really into some of the cards, but I did a lot of like terrain and painting minis, and I ran a couple like custom contests pretty regularly, and I just liked that creation aspect of things, and he sort of knew that, and for his reasons or whatever, when I applied, he was able to get me in there and get me started. So
what were some of your favorite factions or summoners from the first edition? Can you remember that far back?
I was thinking about that. I know that I really enjoyed the Jungle Elves. I didn't necessarily love the Fallen Kingdom mechanics, but I was really good with them and I liked the theme. Always kind of a sucker for theme. I just pick something and I'm going to play it if I like the way it looks or the way it feels. Mountain Vargath were really cool for me at the time, and I'm sure there's some Alliances ones that I'm forgetting. But yeah, so many decks, so many choices.
It ended up with 40 summoners, which is hard to believe. We still haven't quite gotten there, but
I mean, we're headed that way. What do we have after the Drey? Well, we got 2 releasing before the Drey, and then after the Drey, it'll be up till 32, right?
Yeah, when the Drey come out with the Moonstep Wolves, that'll be 32.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. I just recently was at Gen Con, and through the tournament ended up picking up some of the deck boxes, which was my first time getting any of those. And they're really cool, but then I was looking and I was like, if I got deck boxes for every deck that ever comes out...
It's a whole bookshelf.
It'd be a whole process. But yeah, that's kind of my journey through Plaid Hat from Heroscapers and Summoner Wars. I've always been involved with since I got on the Alliances, but I've been pretty involved with them on a bunch of other projects too since I've been playtesting that long. I think there's probably maybe only 3 or 4 games they've put out that I didn't playtest or help develop at some point.
Oh, wow. So you've done a lot of them.
Yeah, long history with them, and worked a lot with Jerry Hawthorne on all of his storytelling games and all that stuff. So, yeah, definitely just a great little family to be involved with.
You're also a published designer as well, right? For you made something for Rose Gauntlet Games, right?
Yeah, so I made a game called Keystone North America, a wildlife-themed game. So when Isaac decided to leave Plaid Hat, him and his co-founder, Lindsay Rode, who I also knew, so I knew, because Lindsay used to be a play tester and involved with Plaid Hat a long time ago. Friends with them, and they were starting their company, and they had kind of told me about that, and I had actually... It was right around COVID, like the beginning of COVID, so like 2020, and I was working in retail, and the stores were getting furloughed temporarily, so I had a little extra time, and I was like, I've always wanted to make a game, not just develop them and playtest them, and so that was a really good time to do it, and I was showing it to Isaac one day and he really liked it. And then a few weeks later, he was like, "Hey, I couldn't tell you about this yet, but I actually just left Plaid Hat and I'm starting my own company." And I was like, "Oh, that's cool." And he's like, "I want to use your game to start my company." And I was like, "Wait, what?" It was like the most surreal phone call. And then immediately got a hold of Lindsay and kind of the rest is history. So they launched Rose Gauntlet, and Keystone was the flagship game, and so that's a really big honor. Yeah, so that's kind of how that all came to be. And yeah, it's just a nature-themed game, but it's a very Euro style. Not anything like what we've talked about with your Summoner Wars.
Not squirrels jumping inside of buildings.
Squirrels jumping inside a building.
But I think it definitely probably helped you when you had that conversation with Colby. However that happened, we could talk about that, I guess, when you were like, "Hey, I want to design a faction for Summoner Wars," or however it went, or you had an idea.
It's kind of an extension of the design process, even while still working on Keystone and the last few years, like 2020 to 2025, I still kept playtesting for Plaid Hat, just not as active as I had been in years past. Because the other thing is, like, I've traveled with them over the years to a lot of the conventions, so I usually do demo for them at Gen Con, and there was a couple years there where I was going out to every convention they went to, like PAX and Origin as well, and helping out. You get in a rhythm, you get to learn all the games, you learn the ins and outs and stuff. Started working on Keystone, I had to step back from the Plaid Hat stuff a little bit. And Keystone did well, and there's a second edition that's coming out soon. Rose Gauntlet kind of gave it a facelift and wanted to relaunch it because we're hoping to continue that product line. But after designing Keystone, I just was experiencing a lot of design burnout. And I just stepped back for a while to focus on other things in life. So I think it was last year I was talking to Colby and I was like, I don't really want to make a whole nother game right now, but I don't want to lose what I got. I'm enjoying the design space and I want to hold on to that. So I just asked him if I could work on a Summoner Wars deck just as kind of a side project, just something to keep, my toe in the water in the design space. He agreed to that, and then we got to where we're at with the upcoming deck.
So when you asked him that question, did you already have an idea for the faction, or you're like, okay, now I got to come up with an idea?
I didn't have any ideas. I had some cool ideas of what I would want to see in a deck, anything specific picked out. Asked him what they needed and if I could work on a project, and they had the upcoming wave that they're going to be releasing, because they'll work on a wave at a time and try and nail down, those 6 decks or whatever it is.
All the symbol combinations, yeah.
Yeah, all the symbol. And so he said the one that they were really struggling with was what the Thornhold Drey are, which is the name of this deck. So they're Nature Logic, I think is what the symbols are called. Originally, they had them slated to be wood goblins, but he's like, I have no ideas, and we're busy with other stuff. So if you want to work on this, you can do that. And so I just got to work. It's really open to not being traditional fantasy. That's something that I don't want to speak for Colby, but he knows that a lot of Summoner Wars players enjoy a lot of the fantasy characters, but having that variety, things that are unique, like the Shimmersea Fae or the Avians, is a lot of fun too. You can make it unique, and I just instantly knew. I was like, nature deck, I want to do squirrels. I don't know what it looks like, I don't know what it's going to be, but we are getting squirrels in this game come hell or high water. And so that's just sort of where I started. I was like, all right, a nature deck, squirrels, what do squirrels do? Sort of designed around the theme first, and then we flushed everything out after that.
So it's interesting. You had the build symbols first, and then you came up with the squirrel idea after that. Did you have a lot of time to playtest the deck as it got to that point too? Were you giving them feedback during the playtest process, or did you just give them set of the started and you're like, well, here you go, and then?
Yeah. So how that sort of worked was once I knew what symbols I was working with and that I wanted squirrels and that they needed to be as nuts as possible, I was like, okay, so template for a deck, right? Summoner, champions, commons, events, and just started writing down ideas. of what are the possible things these cards could be. Like, what can they do? And how do they all work together? How do they represent the different symbols? Like, what makes them feel very squirrely, right? Because in my mind, I was like, I knew that I wanted to make something that was unique. I didn't really care if it ended up being like a top tier, the most competitive deck, anything like that. I was like, I just want it to be fun. I want it to be fun. I want it to be memorable and just very different than anything we've had so far. And I personally happen to know a lot about squirrels and their behaviors and have spent a lot of time around them. I do a lot with different wildlife. Squirrels are always running around. They're coming in and out of buildings. They're stashing food. They're throwing stuff. I was like, that's the direction I was going. So I had a couple drafts of cards, of decks, and then I just play test those against myself. I print them out, sit down, play them a couple times, see what works, doesn't work. And then once I had an iteration that I really liked, I'd send that to Colby. He'd take a look at it, let me know what his thoughts were, kind of give me his guidance on what he likes and doesn't like. And we went through probably 2 or 3 rounds of that before we had a version that he was like, this is great. And then they took that internally. So then at that point, him and Joe and Nick kind of take the deck and change what they want to see, right? Give it their final touches, adjust cards, those sorts of things. And then they put it into the mass playtesting after that.
One random question I had as I was listening is like, when you're doing those very early playtests, what factions did you test them against?
I think I did Phoenix Elves, Wayfarers, Swamp Orcs, and then there might have been one other. I tried to pick just a few things that represented the most core. If you think of a deck and it operates on like one mechanic, like true damage or like true boost or those things, just to kind of see how it felt. Yeah, so those are the ones that are coming to mind.
Cool. No, I was just curious about the process. Yeah. Aaron, I think, tested more than I did because I just kind of I'm on the playtest server, but I haven't had the opportunity to test or like the right situations to do it. But it seemed like you were pretty involved in that process with the other playtesters as well, right?
Yeah, and there was never a requirement for that, but I just wanted to be able to play test like I normally do with all the other decks. It's my baby, and I wanted to see how it went and see what other people were thinking. So I hopped in there and got in as many plays as I could.
Did you ever have another playtester like giving feedback and you were like, no, like we can't change it to that, like that won't work?
No, what was really interesting about the playtesting with this was the final draft that they took internally before putting it into mass playtesting. They did make some changes, and it was a couple little things like on how certain units worked or timing and that sort of stuff. But the biggest thing that was, I think, originally all 3 champions were structures, right? So right now it's 2 structures.
And Vera.
In Vera, regular take post under buildings. So they switched it to that model, and then the events were all just regular events of some kind. So Lumber Wheel came from the internal with Colby and Nick and Joe. And I think that is probably the best thing that happened to the deck, because looking back, it was defense heavy, but it was very static. And so the Lumber Wheel really just opens up a lot of movement options and gives the deck a lot of flavor and versatility.
It's a very funny card. I like it.
Quirky, and I think it really came to life in playtesting. So to sort of answer Aaron's question, what I really enjoyed was, and I think a big thing of this deck, once everybody gets to play it, is going to be all of the potential combinations you can do with it. Like, there's not always one straightforward strategy with the Drey. It's like, I can run my squirrels around, get them in and out from under buildings. I can be highly mobile. I can be somewhat defensive. I can be somewhat aggressive. But like, it's really hard for your opponent to know what direction you're going to come from sometimes, because with the same 3 cards, there's maybe 2 or 3 different combos you could pull off. And so just seeing play testers sort of stress test that and make sure these combos weren't too broken and that all the cards worked well with each other was really, really interesting. And just getting their feedback on on that and making sure that something like the lumber wheel wasn't too broken, like it didn't have too much health, or what phase does a certain ability trigger in, and that sort of stuff. So I think it was great because there was a lot of conversation back and forth around balance, but it was because there is so many possibilities with this combos with this deck that we had to make sure that like there wasn't strategy that wasn't obvious to us, and then when it hits the mark it's just like, oh, that's broken.
Yeah, there were definitely some iterations in which the lumber wheel was very strong.
Yeah.
It was a good time. I loved the lumber wheel. Even as the final product, the lumber wheel is great fun. But there was some iterations where it was very strong.
From a design perspective, I think it's very interesting what it does, because just the deck in general, because you have all these guys that sort of take post underneath your structures, so they're like hiding in the structure. And then the other big thing that's new is there's a lot of putting boosts onto structures, and then the structures gain abilities or other things from having those boosts on them. Boosted structures is kind of a new thing because that mix of these two symbols. What do you think the boosts represent? Is it like, are you hiding nuts in these guys, or what's the deal?
Yeah, so that's they're nuts. And we're in the world of Summoner Wars, so there's magic associated with it too, right? And like if you peel the curtain back a little bit, I think like the first iteration of the deck that I came up with was, I don't think Take Post was around. My very first version was High Movement, and I only played that a couple times, sent it to Colby, got his thoughts, and he's like, squirrels run in and out of the trees. I was like, I know, you're absolutely right. I was like, we got to figure that out. And so then I was able to come up with the take post mechanic. But the stacking boost on structures was something I knew I wanted from the start as well. And so, they're squirrel-sized squirrels, right? They're not squirrel humanoids. And so it's like, well, how is this going to work? Well, the summoner, has, Colby was talking to me about the art direction. He's like, well, the stone's probably going to be strapped to his back, and they're going to have like these little weapons they've crafted and stolen from real Cloak's workshop or something like that. And I was like, okay, fantastic. We'll make this work. Worked on the take post ability, figured out where to put boost. Because like a lot of the logic engineering decks don't have a ton of boost function so far, I believe. Maybe there's one out there.
No, not really, no.
And then the nature earth, right? Like Savannah Elves or Fungal Dwarves, like I said, it's stacked on the unit. So it's like, how do we make this work? And I think the final product came out well. Like, just, you're stashing your nuts, you send your squirrels into the buildings to eat the nuts and do the things, and then spread them out and fight. And just very thematically, it ended up working out really well.
Do you have a favorite card in the deck?
Thematically, I love the Nutcracker. The lumber wheel is just too much fun, right? It's too much fun to try and pull off. I love that satisfaction of trying to get a bunch of boosting units under it and send it across the battlefield. So that's probably the funnest card to play with. And then, yeah, the Nutcracker is just, it's a total meme. So I really like that. Yeah.
And there's also the other structure champion, the what's it called, the Rumble Bus? Is that right?
Yeah,
the Rumble Bus.
Rumble Bus, most wild name. I don't know who came up with that name. It wasn't me, but
Colby, always Colby. Colby came up with Dwarf the Dwarf and the Rumble Bus.
Totally quirky.
Because if it was Joe, then Colby would have changed it. So
I can't really think of anything else as far as the design process wise, right? Because kind of once it hits playtesting, it's
out of your
doesn't
hands.
have to design the deck; it's out of your hands. Yeah, but that's where it really comes to life to see how people actually play it.
I guess that's the other thing. Like, once it hit the playtesting process, is Colby the one who has the final say then? Like, was Nick make his proposals to you or to Colby, or how did that work?
So I don't know internally exactly how they do it. My experience has been, so once we had the final draft that Colby was happy with for taking internal, I think him and Joe and Nick all sort of pick it apart however they have that process. And then whatever that final product is what they put in play testing. And then you see the ABCs after that. Nick runs play testing, that's part of his job description, and then Joe does the updates, and I think Colby does get final say on all this stuff at the end of the day. He gives it the seal of approval before it takes off.
An aspect that I'm a little curious about is there a kickback you get on every squirrel sold? I mean, is there you get a nickel for every Drey deck sold? Or?
No. So what happens is I had to set up a separate PO box under a different name, and then Colby puts an acorn in an envelope and so I'm just building my own stash there. Yeah,
Nice.
So then you got to get your own nutcracker.
exactly. The question is, do I get life-size nutcracker or a model? But even a life-size nutcracker, if it's fitting just squirrels, I don't know how big it is. It might still fit in my place. We'll have to see.
I think it'd be cool, and I know they haven't done this for any of the other decks either, but I think it'd be cool for the decks that aren't designed by the normal team if there was even a little your name across the front of the box that it comes in, or the little pack or something like that. I think it would be a cool thing to do.
Recognition is great, and I'm sort of in this interesting position, right? Like, not to float my own boat, but because I have naturally fallen in step with Plaid Hat for so long and working on so many other projects that I think at the end of the day, like, Colby really values having most of the decks be designed by him and then sprinkling in other people's flavor here and there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, I might be totally mistaken, but I might be the first person to make a deck that wasn't on the paid staff. There could be someone else that designed one, but
I think that sounds right for second edition.
Yeah.
I think in first edition there were more decks that were designed by others here and there.
that sounds right. But for me, it's like I just love the game so much, and I'm so involved with the company for so long as a playtester and developer that it's and the final product has changed, right? Through playtesting, through others. So I sort of see it as everybody's baby. I said I want squirrels in the game, I got squirrels in the game. And from there it doesn't really matter, right? Everybody else pitched in. So
speaking of squirrels, I have kind of a nerdy question for you. Where's the word Drey come from?
No clue. That's another Colby thing.
Oh, it is.
So with the design, I was hands off with the names. For the most part, I think I named several of the abilities, but as far as like unit names and faction names, I just left that to Colby. So
Okay.
not sure where the Drey came from. Maybe it's another Fae type thing. So maybe
I don't know, because I'm just curious about the etymology because I'm a linguistics nerd, but I guess I'll have to look it up myself because there's a couple cards in like Magic the Gathering that are Drey such and such, and they also involve squirrels. So maybe it's maybe it's like an Irish word or something. I don't know. I have to look it up.
I just Googled it, and it is the nest of a squirrel.
It's the nest of a squirrel.
Interesting. I'm surprised I don't know that because I'm such a biology nerd. But that makes a lot of sense. Separate fun fact though. So when squirrels are eating all the pine cones and the shavings fall at the bottom of a tree and make a giant pile, I believe that is called a midden. So that's another thing that they make. Yeah, and it's just all their extra pine cone bits.
Do you have a favorite type of squirrel?
That's a good question. So, a squirrel called the Abert's squirrel, which lives mostly in the mountains, and they have like these demon-looking ears, like these big tufts that come out of them, and they're pretty cool and rare.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. My username, Backcountry Gamer, kind of comes from my dual lifestyle. When I'm not working, I'm either playing board games or I spend a lot of time in nature in the mountains, so I hike and bike and trail run a lot. I'm really big into hunting as well. I just spend a lot of time around wildlife and just learn as much about them as I can as a result of that.
I'm trying to think about I don't have the art in front of me. Are there any like squirrels that resemble like the Averett squirrel, or?
I don't think so. The squirrels are pretty fantastical. I don't think they're modeled after a certain friendly neighborhood squirrel or anything like that.
Yeah, I was just trying to think about the ears. Maybe.
Yeah, I remember when I first saw the artwork for the Bramble Knight and just how crazy his face was. I was like, oh no, what have we done? And then I think about, like, you have, like, the Fire Drake, and you have a squirrel-sized squirrel running at that thing with a sword, and it can actually kill it. I'm like, what did they do to this thing? Like, this is some magic right here.
The faction seems really cool, and I love the use of climb in a deck like this, because like it makes sense for squirrels, right? It's cool that you can walk over your own structures, because it's a deck that also has structures. So I loved the use of climb in the deck where it appeared.
Needing it to be a structure-heavy deck and looking for ways to unique ways to get around, right? Because we've already seen is you look at things like the Forged and other stuff, and they have their own little ways of moving around. It's like we got to come up with something unique, and so Climb, was not new, but it did open up a world of possibilities. And then with Take Post and the way that turned out, it was just, I think that's going to be what players have the most interesting experience learning about with this deck is when to put units under and take them out, and the fact that you can do it multiple times in a turn, and that really opens up your ability to move across the battlefield and chain units from one building to the next. Yeah, there's like a very hidden mobility game with these guys that you can do to cross the battlefield faster, adjust your positioning if you need to.
The scurry ability kind of uses some new wording, but I mean, it makes sense. It says, I think, whenever you enter the battlefield, it gets to immediately force one space. So that's kind of like how, I mean, they already had Rush, right? But this is different because it can be activated multiple times a turn, like if you take post and get back out kind of thing.
Exactly, yeah. So it really lets you get it moved, and then it also opens up a lot of realms. So whether it's your lumber wheel or something else, if you have a couple of the commons with scurry under, and you use Go Nuts so that every time they get deployed out with Fen's ability, they can make an extra attack. I think that's the Gladewatch Scout that has that ability. So you can put them out, make an attack, then trigger Scurry, get them out of the way, and then get another one out and kind of repeat that process or get multiple, 3, 4, 5 attacks out of one spot. And that can be super powerful if your opponent's not paying attention.
Yeah, you can literally go nuts.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah, I think Scurry, it came out a little later in playtesting, and I think it fits super well in the deck, and I really like the plays that you can make with it. It really is something that changed the dynamic of the deck when it got added.
Yeah, it went from like black and white mobility to this sort of gray zone of we haven't seen some quite like that before, and yeah, it's proved to be really fun. Even though I made the deck, I'm probably not the best player with it, which I was talking to some of the other playtesters before this, just kind of seeing where we think we've landed, what they think about it, and the consensus that I was getting from some of the people that have the higher play counts. In essence, it's a defense deck, right? You're popping up all these structures, taking control of your side of the battlefield, making it really hard for the opponent to approach you. But because of those mobility tricks that we were just talking about, you're really just sort of looking for your opportunity to then take the mid ground and advance. Like, it's just a very flexible strategy deck. So I'm not sure on the competitive aspect how it's going to end up, like tier wise. If I had to guess, it's maybe going to be like upper Bs into lower As. But there's just so many potential combos. I think it's going to really be able to hold its weight against a lot of other decks, at least for a while. It's a more thinky deck. You have to paying attention when to take post, making sure that you don't burn through your units too fast. It seems like getting all your champs out is a really good move if possible, which is doable because most of the commons are low cost. So I think it'll be fairly competitive, but it's probably not going to be like some S tier game-changing deck.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. I think it'll probably land like low A. I think what I saw in playtesting in the plays that I had was the Drey sometimes really struggle if factions like get up next to their gates and like really pressure them, especially early on, because you then have to make like hard choices of, do I leave a unit out instead of taking post because I want to protect that spot and so I have a chance to like summon, or do I take post and leave the ability for them to lock that spot and stop me from summoning? And if the other faction has the ability to like dive in and start blocking all your summoning points, then it's real tough for the Drey to fight back.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I felt that decision point a lot too, and especially if you don't have or you've already used your bursting stores event to get them off your structures, it's just, they can deal well with assassination. It's like, even though Fen is a 9 health, there's a lot of ways for him to be protected. But if you get clogged, you're really in trouble. The other thing I know is if you have a bad draw, it can be really hard to recover from an early bad draw, especially on those more aggressive decks.
Yeah, and the draw thing's kind of unique because take post is such a big part of this deck that if you don't draw, because it's only on 2 of your commons and 1 champ, if you don't draw those units, the deck is not, like, it's a very different deck if you don't draw any of your take post units. I think the Bursting Stores does definitely help with that. That was another one that I think got added fairly late in testing or like towards the later end. And I remember playing a game against the Drake's Son Rebellion before that got added, and it was very rough because dragons right in the face, diving right in.
Yeah, I think that event originally was it would give you boost or something like that, and then, kind of what we've already talked about, just like I really enjoy about the playtesting aspect is just pressure testing these things and trying to solve that puzzle of if and or but to make sure that you're, and it's the same with every other project I've ever worked on. It's like every time you think you've got it right, you just got to keep pushing it, get some fresh eyes, and then you realize, oh, there's another way to do this, and eventually you hit that eureka moment, and yeah, it's no different with any of the Summoner Wars decks. We'll see where it lands. I think it'll be interesting to see, because I know there's several decks that people avoid in live play, in-person events. Like, I know every time I play in the Gen Con tournaments, there's a lot of people that talk about certain decks and not bringing them because they're like, it's just too much analysis paralysis for such a short time.
Like high elves or fungal dwarves or something, or
I think High Elf, Fungal Doors, a lot of people, I've played the Swamp Orcs, but I know a lot of other people avoid Swamp Orcs just because of tracking the boost, right, on the timer, because you've got to do that on your time clock.
this has a bit of that with the boost, but also like all the structural decision points.
Easily burn your time pretty fast. So it'll be interesting to see if they get much like like live event play. But time will tell.
I play some of those factions, and I played some like 45-minute games online, but I have not played with like chess clocks with like fungal dwarves or swamp orcs or
The in-person tournaments with with the 25-minute chess clocks is just a whole different animal, and I love it. That's the environment that I really thrive in personally. But it's very different than playing any of the games online.
Yeah, I gotta get to Gen Con. I think I'm gonna do it next year. I often find that these 45-minute games are too long, and I'll have like 23 of my minutes used at the end of the game. In the live league this season, I had a game against Massimo where he had 10 seconds left, literally 10 seconds, and I had used half the time, 23 minutes or something.
Yeah,
And it's like if I just played a little better, or even just tried to draw the clock out, a little more, I could have just won. I think the shorter clock, the better for me. Just the way I tend to play, at least with like Wayfarers and stuff.
I think you'd enjoy it. Gen Con's a blast, and the community that shows up out there for Summoner Wars and all the Plaid Hat stuff is all really great people. Personally, like, I'm not probably a very conventional Summoner Wars player. I mostly play in the ranked. I used to do League, but I just really often find myself running out of time or not getting around to games just because of my personal schedule, so it's just easier for me to kind of click in and start games whenever I'm available. But I usually spend like 60 seconds or less on a turn. I really don't think through all that often. I'm just there. It's kind of almost a passive way to have fun. If I want to like put my mind to it, because I'll usually sit around 1200 ELO, and I can get up to that 1400 if I really try. But then I find that like all I'm doing is playing Summoner Wars with my free time because it just takes me so much time to think through all the turns. So that like fast and quick format where just on the fly decisions are what you got to make and are rewarding. That's just where I really thrive. And yeah, Gen Con's a blast. I think you'd have a lot of fun.
maybe we'll both be at the next one, James.
Yeah, we can walk around and do interviews, try to do a recording. That's
A live discard for Magic.
Yes.
Back to the Drey. One big major question is: are you happy with how it's turned out? Like, are you look at this and like, yeah, squirrels are in the game? Like,
They came out great. Couldn't be happier. I can't think of anything on them I would want to change.
What about making the boost tokens that are used for them actual acorns.
That's what you should do. You should make your own little custom acorns and use them when you play the Drey next Gen Con.
I've never thought of this, but as you're saying it out loud, so the tokens in Keystone are acorns. So I can
Ooh.
those from my copy of the game and use those, and that would be fantastic. They could just start having thematic boost tokens for each deck, and those could be like upgrades to your subscription if you wanted.
What would Tundra Orcs have? Because I mean, Gognak he only gets one boost
Ice
normally,
chunks.
but in deck building you get so many boosts.
Ice chunks, fungal doors, could be like mushrooms. You could have like just all sorts of. That'd be interesting.
Plant growth for the tree or the Savannah elves.
That could be like a premium subscription edition. Get all your fancy boosts and individual deck boxes just for those boost tokens on top of your regular deck boxes, and just see how much space you pick up by having add-ons.
Colby and Joe were talking about how they needed some things potentially for a Summoner Wars Kickstarter in the future, so maybe we'll see something like that.
We'll have to see what happens.
So you made that other game, Keystone.
Which is secretly just squirrels too. It's just all squirrels.
Yeah, there's squirrels in there. I think there's like 3 or 4 squirrels.
Are you working on anything else now? The other question is if you can talk about it or not. But yeah.
Right now, I'm not working on any projects. With Keystone, so the reason it's called North America is because it's wildlife themed, is that product line expands into each of the continents, and that's kind of a natural way to, extend the product. And so we're waiting to see how second edition of North America does before moving forward with anything else there. I have 2 or 3 other designs that I've worked on over the last few years that I've kind of shelved for now. Just kind of like I was mentioning earlier, I got really burnt out on design and just wasn't in a good spot for that for a while. And I'm getting back to a place where I kind of want to start working on that, right? Working on the Drey, really got those juices flowing again, and there's a little baby step into the pool, but I might be jumping back in here soon and seeing what I can do with some other designs, but we'll just take it a day at a time and see what comes.
James, maybe we should approach Joe and Colby and ask if they'll let the podcast crew design a faction.
We wouldn't want the same faction though, right? I mean, like that's the tough part, right?
Maybe we'd create the best faction,
I mean, it would just be cave goblins again or something. I don't know. Like I'm trying to think of like the union of what or the intersection of like our interests.
I mean, we both like wayfarers. We both.
Yeah.
I feel like you would have to design something where there's an ability that specifically triggers when you're discarding for magic.
When you discard for magic, yeah.
I mean, maybe that's what we base it off of.
The summoner's abilities is when you discard for magic, you get 2 magic, and then you have to figure out a way. You have to figure out a way to balance that.
You just have super expensive cards, but you can only play half of them.
Ultimate broken econ. When you discard 1 card, add 1 card from your discard to your deck. It's just never-ending draw pile.
When you discard 1 card for magic, you have to discard the rest of your hand too.
Yeah, design's a lot of fun. There's a lot of people out there that kind of like seeing the behind the scenes and the nuts and the bolts of it all, pun intended. But yeah, it's just a sort of a good creative outlet at the end of the day, and I've just been very fortunate to sort of make the right connections and be in the right place in the right time to get some of my own there. But
do you think, if given the opportunity, you would design another Summoner Wars faction?
Yeah, I think so. I think that would be of interest. I still have a bunch of ideas written down, but it would just kind of depend on where the crew is at and what Colby needs.
If you get the opportunity to design the turtle faction, hold it over Tort's head forever.
Yeah. I'll specifically request that whatever I get has to be a turtle faction, just to upset him.
But you have to make it the worst faction.
Yeah, make it just dreadful.
It could be like the summoner has some sort of special ability, but because they're slow, all units only move one space. You only draw one card at the end of every turn, not up to 5.
Yeah.
Just a bunch of other.
Everything's slow.
Yeah, everything's slow.
Or there's just some fine print on the summoner for the turtle faction. You automatically lose the game if you're Tortugatron.
Yeah.
He's claimed that if the faction comes out, he's just gonna play that faction.
Great.
Kind of
Yeah.
like there's already people like trying to claim squirrels as like when they come out. There's definitely some people on the Discord excited for squirrels.
People are very excited for squirrels.
Yeah, they're gonna go nuts over that. It's just one of those things that Summoner Wars can do really well, and Plaid Hat can do really well. Is just the offbeat fantasy things that aren't, mainstream, and they just really do. Even just in the artwork, right? Bring them to life. So it'll be really cool to see what everybody thinks of them.
Yeah.
Even in like the fantasy races that are already very prevalent, like the goblins, the orcs, the elves, like Plaid Hat does a very good job of creating very unique ones, storm goblins or fungal dwarves or these things that you will not see in any other fantasy game.
I was gonna say Wave 5 seemed to break a lot of new ground, but then it's ending with like your Dragon Riders and Guild Wars, but I think those will still be cool.
And I don't know if it's intentional or not, but I've noticed if it's something that's more typical fantasy, but I find a lot of connections of what's going on in like other pop culture, right? Like House of Dragons and Game of Thrones is really big, right? And so like Sun Rebellion's just kind of not the most unique idea, but it's cool to have like dragons with people riding around on them, and that's something like big, in media. And I've seen that with other projects that they've done over the years of just like kind of tapping into like what the market is super interested in. I don't know if that's a conscious business decision or if they're just like influenced because we all like consuming the same media and are nerds.
Yeah, or if they're just like, what do we do with fire and wind? I guess they're dragons, like
Dragons.
we got 66 decks. we'll get there. I think so, and I appreciate you helping them fill in some of those gaps and make a cool deck.
Like I said, it's been a lot of fun. Very, very fortunate that they let me do it, and I'm excited to see what everybody else thinks of them. And when it hits the wild, I don't know. Maybe some people will really kick my butt with them. Because I made them doesn't mean I'm the best player with them. So
yeah, Colby's proven that time and time
again.
Yeah,
I was gonna say Colby has proven that. We appreciate you coming on the podcast and discussing the squirrels with us.
Thanks for having me on, and thanks for doing what you guys do with the podcast. I know as just a listener that it's a good another outlet to enjoy something that I am passionate about. So keep doing what you guys are doing, and I know that we all really like the episodes you're making. So keep it up.
Thanks.
This has been another episode of Discard for Magic, and we'll see you guys in a couple weeks.